I want to share with you through the fortune that I had with Remax to attend the international convention for the last 6 years. Well, I skipped the last one, but 6 years before that, I attended the international convention in Las Vegas, the Remax convention, and they had some amazing speakers over there. And I want to share with you two speakers that really influenced me, maybe parts of what they said, one of them the entire experience, because it's a huge opportunity to listen to some of these people. So the first one was Condoleeza Rice, who was Secretary of State, National Security Advisor. It was fascinating to hear someone like that, you know, in a convention of a real estate company. It's a headliner. 40 years, they celebrated 40 years for Remax when she was there, so I'm sure they put in the extra effort to bring someone of that caliber. She spoke for like 20-25 minutes, and then she was interviewed by the then CEO of Remax, Margaret Kelly. And I still remember from this speech a few points that she made. Some of the things were very relevant to that time, you know, the politics, the situation in the Middle East and so on. She said something very interesting as she was climbing the ladder of success, becoming more and more powerful. She said that her biggest challenge was to keep around her a group of people that would keep telling her the truth to her face. That she found that as you gain power, you also gain yes men, which is a very interesting insight. That you are, let's say, isolated from the truth by more and more layers of people who just say what you want to hear. And she made it a point, in order to be a good leader, that she surrounds herself with people who knew her before, when she was, you know, a regular person, so to speak, and are not in awe of her current status, and are able to tell her the truth. And that is amazing leadership. It's probably why she got to where she got, because from my experience, and I have to tell you this very honestly, from my experience, executive like yes men. They say they don't like yes men, but they do. They like to hear their own opinions, you know, repeated. They like to hear what they want to hear. And it's just human nature, I guess. And when you gain power and you employ people and you have them on your salary, or they just respect you because of your position, then they tend to toe the line. It happens almost subconsciously. And the executives like this line towing, so to speak. They like to hear what they want to hear. It's something that I've seen in many organizations. Nobody says that. Every executive that you will ever meet say, oh, I want the truth. I want my people to be honest with me. I want them to speak their opinion regardless of consequences and be brave, and that will challenge me in thinking into new directions. And most often that's just bullshit. They want yes men around them. So I think what Condoleeza Rice said is a huge message to everyone who's running a business, small, medium, big, managing people. Even if you're a hired manager or a company owner, it's so difficult, and you need to watch yourself. If you want your own opinion repeated, sure, no problem. It's not necessarily what's going to take you to a next level. Now, the second person, which for me was the most emotional keynote speech I've heard, was Magic Johnson. Now, Magic Johnson for me, it's beyond the person. It's when I grew up watching the Lakers. I was like 13, 14, 15. So it was a very impressionable age, and you know, the Lakers were unbelievable with Magic and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, Michael Cooper, Byron Scott. Amazing team. I wasn't a Lakers fan, but you just couldn't stay indifferent to that team. And then of course in 91, 92, everything that Magic Johnson went through with the HIV positive revelation, and you know, retiring from basketball, being brought back by the fans, voted in, despite retiring, voted into the All-Star game. And I remember watching that All-Star game. It was probably like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in Israel, and I remember watching it like it was yesterday. Magic sinking that last three-pointer when everybody knew the minute the ball left his hand that it's going to go in, because that was Magic. And his nickname was not in vain. He had magic as a player, and then listening to him as a businessman, because he didn't speak about his playing days a lot. I don't think he spoke about his playing days at all during his keynote speech. And that's the beautiful thing about him, that he was able to put this legend of a basketball player, 5 championships and so on, behind him, and reinvent himself, reestablish himself in our consciousness as a business person, and as a hugely successful businessman, as a multi-millionaire, running various businesses, the face of the Los Angeles Dodgers, which is the second most valuable second or third most valuable franchise in baseball, behind, of course, the New York Yankees. Cannot beat the Yankees, man. But Magic made such an amazing trip, and he shared with us so many interesting insights. How he, for instance, turned Starbucks into a successful network in underprivileged neighborhoods where everybody thought it's a lost cause because Starbucks is relatively expensive and no one is going to buy expensive coffee and scones in projects. And Magic Johnson proved everyone wrong. He's committed to developing minority communities through his businesses, cinemas and entertainment complexes, and Starbucks, which he sold since then. And he did everything with so much grace. All this keynote speech was with so much humor. Some of it self-deprecating, very charming, like he was as a player, with his amazing smile. And as he was talking, he left the stage because he doesn't need a stage. He's like, I don't know, 6'8" to 6'9", maybe even more. So he left the stage. He was walking around, and as he was talking with a microphone in his hand, people were hugging him, coming to him with Lakers shirts and basketballs. And he was signing as he was talking to people, and he did everything so nonchalantly, so cool. And one thing I still regret to this day is I didn't run to hug him, which I really wanted to do, but I said no, I'm going to be mature and cool about it, which is stupid because I should have done that. And I will always be grateful for the opportunity to hear someone like that. It's not someone like that, it's him specifically, in person. And I remember what he said about service, and he said that he understands the concept that we are all familiar with of under promise and over deliver, which many service-oriented people train, actually. But he said he believes in over-promise and over-deliver, and that's how he would train his staff, and how he would set the standard for the businesses that he owns. That you don't lower your expectations, you increase the expectations of the customer, and you still over-deliver. You still amaze them and wow them, and it's been working for him, and it should be working for every one of us. But I think the main thing that's working for him is the passion that he brings into his business, and it's these insights that these special people have. It's like what Condoleeza Rice said about yes men, like what Magic Johnson understood about reinventing himself. He actually said that being a famous basketball player was a hindrance when he was trying to set up businesses, because everybody knew him, everybody knew he was HIV positive, and back then in the 90s, venture capitals, they didn't think he was going to last long enough to return the investment. So actually all his fame was counterproductive for his launch, but he was able to power through all these obstacles, became, I think, one of the two most important ambassadors in the fight against AIDS and HIV. I'm not talking about doctors, of course, and people who actually treat the disease, but publicly and socially, for me, the two most important people who changed the way we perceive HIV in the 1990s and late 80s were Magic Johnson and Madonna, for two different reasons. And I think that they will always have a place in history just for what they did with combating HIV, regardless of anything else they do. And that's a great lesson I always say about Magic Johnson, and I tell my students to this day. I made a small video, and I always share this inspirational story, how he took what life gave him, and he knows he brought it on himself, right? The HIV is something that he inflicted because of his promiscuity, but he knows that he took it and made it into something good, and he changed thousands, if not tens of thousands of people's lives, because he changed the perception of HIV. And those of you who are old enough remember, it used to be known as the gay disease, and he was heterosexual, and he completely put it out there, and he was very honest about it. And cynical people say, well, he had to be honest because he had to retire, because that was the contract and that was his insurance. It doesn't really matter. He stood behind it, and I want to end this video with a story that he told us in Vegas, in that convention, about what happened to him right after. So imagine a person who was in basketball his entire life. That's the only thing he knows since he was a child. It made him famous, it made him rich, it made him happy, it made him who he is. It's his self-definition as a basketball player, and then boom, one day he has to retire. There's no process. So he told us that he was lying at home in his couch, and he was depressed and didn't want to do anything. And his wife, Cookie, which actually decided to stay with him, it's a completely different story, by the way, came to him and said, Magic, you got to leave the house. He He said, like, what? He said, yes, you got to leave the house and don't come back until you are once again the man I married. And he gave her huge credit. He actually did that. And he gave her huge credit in shifting his mindset and understanding that he handled adversity before, not at that level, but he handled adversity before, and his mental strength is what got him to where he was. So he cannot give up this time and allow his mental toughness to be crack and fall apart. And that's a great lesson to all of us. So amazing people inspire us, and what we get from them serves us, and we need to pass the torch to the next person that we can influence. That's how I see it.